as I said, this is the first ever episode that we actually go live with, you know, an amazing person that I am very proud to call my dear friend, Natascha Moy. Welcome, Natascha.
Thanks, Dr. Vincent.
And
How are you?
I'm very, very well. And I know you for many, many years. As a matter of fact, you are, as you said, you are not only our brand ambassador, your your face. You were the face of our Annapolis Day doing a yoga pose on the side of a bus in Sydney. But today is a little bit different. I want you to come on to speak about your recent professional shift into counseling psychotherapist, and I have a little bit of an intro here that I'm going to read to for all of us and those who are listening and watching. My guest, Natascha Moy, is a counseling psychotherapist who helps individuals and couples navigate the complexity of relationships, from heartbreak to growth, early parenthood to long term shifts. Natascha empowers her clients to build resilience, set boundaries, and transform challenges into lasting emotional strength. How did I do, Natascha?
You did so well. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. And the reason why I want to talk about this part of your professional life is because I first knew you as a journalist, and then I knew you as a podcaster as well as a coach to teach people how to podcast. And then I also know you as an amazing, strong, extraordinary woman who is also an amazing mother. And now I feel that everything that you've done in your life has been preparing you for this role, and I would like you to speak a little bit about that and how everything that you've done you learn through all the triumphs, successes, and maybe failures that has led you to be doing what you're doing right now.
Oh, okay. So as you said, I started my life as a journalist. I have a Bachelor of Journalism degree, and I started within like investigative journalism. So question and answers, finding out what made people tick, what made them successful, what made them powerful. I've always been really interested in power. And how people hold their power, how they use it, and not in the dirty word of power, but in, you know, being how to be powerful as a person, because that gives you self-esteem. And when you have great self-esteem, it means that you can kind of tackle anything. So my journalism led into radio, where I did a radio series called The Dialogue, where I got to interview remarkable people, and that's where I met you. I remember when
I'm
I met
smiling
you.
because that means that I'm remarkable.
Well, it was a remarkable thing, and I remember not wanting to interview you initially because I said that you were too young and that you hadn't had enough life for me to really spend 30 minutes. And you were an extraordinary guest and obviously have done an enormous amount in your life. So it was a great interview. And after that, from the radio, I learned how to podcast. I got separated, and my ex-husband decided that he was going to take me to court for custody, and I wanted to be able to fund that and fight that. So I worked out that the only thing I knew how to do really well was podcast, and so I started podcast coaching. And it was the same thing. It was about giving people a voice, being able to kind of identify what they wanted and what they needed for themselves. It was a very natural progression into counseling. I feel like I've been doing it for 1,000 years. And one of my clients recently wrote to me and told me that she couldn't do what she was doing without me, and that I'd managed to change her life. So I guess I've landed where I'm meant to be.
Wow, that's so powerful, and I feel that I mean, in my opinion, you've been doing it for as long as I've known you. It's just that you have been doing it for free, and now you're actually helping people and getting paid for that, right? So,
Charging for it.
one of the things that really intrigued me in terms of how you're approaching, your lives, and now how you're defining relationship is that you told me, and I feel that it's such a powerful definition and approach towards relationship, that it is not just a one event, one big thing. It's not just one marathon. You told me that it is. we need to approach it or to change and shift our perspective that it is like series of stages. Which can you please share more about that?
So relationships are like anything. It's an evolving process. It's an evolution of spirit, it's an evolution of your personality, and you're going to go through a whole lot of different stages. So I talk very much about the business of love. I firmly believe that relationships need to be run like you run a business. They need really good scaffolding at the bottom. You need to be able to build a really good foundation, and you do that through extraordinary communication. But that starts from day one. It starts at the dating and in the dating phase, where you get to ask uncomfortable questions. You get to make sure that you're all on the same page. You talk about the uncomfortable things like money and children and expectations. The fastest way to disappointment is an unmet expectation. But most of us don't explain what our expectation of an experience is. So we go into relationships expecting the other person is going to meet our needs. I have so many women that say to me, why do I need to tell him? He's known me for long enough. Why doesn't he just know? And that expectation in itself, it leads to an instant sense of failure. You can't survive that. So you've got to deal with the different stages in your life in different ways. But if you have a really strong foundation, a really strong scaffolding, you're going to be able to meet everything with good communication, excellent conflict management skills. And that means every stage that you hit, and in a failed relationship, you will land up with the process towards failure. The moment it fails, and I use that word very loosely, at the point when you uncouple, whether that's consciously or aggressively or how you choose to do it, the grief phase that you're going to go through afterwards, everyone goes through grief. And then you're going to have the rebuilding phase on the other side, where you actually get to do the work around who you want to be and how you actually want that next relationship to go. So those
Yeah.
are the phases.
But what you mentioned that, some women come to you and say that, how did they not know this? How did my partner not know this? Because he has known me for so long, and so clearly one party has created this expectation that has not been met by the other party. But how does one first understand? Because I've heard this so many times that people say that, the only way to not be disappointed is to not have expectation. But on the other hand, I also know that there are people who came out of relationship, for example, probably mostly from my part of the gender, the man. They say that they want to be better men, they want to listen better. So clearly, they aspire to be a better partner, be it men or women. But how do they actually put that in action? Because wanting to want something is quite different to actually doing things.
I think when it comes to communication, using curiosity is a really, really great way forward. So the idea is, I'll give you a small example. You're going to go away for a weekend. And doesn't matter. So two people are going away. Doesn't matter. Heterosexual couple, same-sex couple, makes no difference. And you're going to say to your, so I'm going to go away and I'm going to expect that we're going to eat breakfast out every day and we're going to go to the antique market and we'll have an afternoon sleep and then we're going to
This
go for some
sounds
posh.
this sounds so, sorry to say this sounds so much like your weekend.
Exactly, and a really posh dinner somewhere along the line. The other person's decided that they're going away for the weekend and they're probably going to go for a really long walk. They don't want to eat out, they'd like to cook in. You haven't had any of these conversations. You're both coming together to go and have this experience together. You get there and there's a disconnect. Before you go away, you sit down and you say, what is your expectation of the holiday? The one person is like, I'd like to go out and eat dinner every night. I'd like to have breakfast out. I'd like to, have sex this many times. I'd like to do all of these things. The other person goes, that's not what I want. And then you get to say, okay, how do we get what you want? We'll go for one beautiful long walk in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we're going to go out for a nice tea. And that night we'll cook at home. And the following night, we're going to go for a beautiful dinner. And then you build the expectation. Now, you have a whole lot of people, normally people who are avoidantly attached, who want spontaneity. They don't want to be stuck to a rigid plan. The thing is, spontaneity, often people who are spontaneous either don't do anything at all or do something without ever considering the other person and what they might like or need. You line up with two people who are then completely on different pages.
But to do that, it sounds like someone actually has to know themselves first. Because the problem is, I feel that sometimes, and myself included, I don't know what I want until the other party does something that I know I don't want. And that creates conflict, because it's one thing to know that you need to communicate it, but sometimes I feel that people struggle to actually know what they want. Do you find that a common thing?
I think that's such a great question. I've never been asked that question before, so actually it is pretty good. I guess a lot of people don't know what they necessarily want. They know what they don't want. But this is where you actually need to spend some time with yourself. You need to sit there and work out what makes you feel good. And that is actually about linking that mind and body together. So, understanding what your bodily sensations are telling you. So many people are walking around treating the container, which is their body, as if it were disconnected from their mind. The container is going to do its own thing, and the mind's going to do something completely different. So, what you've actually got to do is start to work with the two of them together in a more holistic way. So, when something feels nice, you're going to get a good feeling somewhere. And that's going to inform you that that's something that you enjoy and something that you like. So you start working out how you feel about things. If your response to something is to move away from it, or you get a feeling in another part of your body that's going, this is really uncomfortable for me. And that's how you start to learn who you are. You start to learn who you are by listening to your body and how it responds to different things. That way, you get to be able to then say, this is what I actually like. I really like these things. And this is how I'd like to sort of be seen.
And if that happens, if this realization happens while someone is in a relationship, which I imagine would create a lot of anxiety, and anxious feelings, because you obviously do not want to disappoint your partner, and at the same time you also want to be happy, to be doing something that makes you happy. What are the tools that you would give your clients while they're in the relationship, in the current relationship, and they want to make it work, to create harmony? What are the tools that we can learn from you in terms of making sure that everybody's needs, including themselves, are met?
The only way you can disappoint your partner is when you've set an unrealistic expectation, when you haven't been authentic and you haven't been truthful. So the only way that you can disappoint someone is if you let them think that you like something you don't, or that you're willing to do something that you don't. And that comes part and parcel of the initial conversations that you have. So it's being able to actually have an opportunity to communicate that. I always suggest that you work out with that person when they like to communicate and how you like to communicate. So some people like to sit down face to face. Some people would prefer to have it on a text message. There are different ways that people like to do it. You generally will have four different kinds of attachers. You'll have an avoidant attacher, a secure attacher, an anxious attacher, or a disorganized attacher. You're going to have one of these four usually in a relationship scenario. Each one is going to operate differently when it comes to communication. So you work out what you are and how you need to get information to one another. I always recommend that you have a relationship book, a soft cover book, and a pen, and you get down and you get to write these things into the book. So it's clear, you understand. That way there's no disappointment because you don't have a false sense of expectation. And I
I
think so my tool is the book. I am a firm believer in scribing down things and making really strong agreements that you both get to repeat. So if I'm making an agreement with you and I say, I would like to have fish and chips tomorrow, and this is what I'd like to do on my holiday, I'm going to say to you, can you reiterate or can you say back to me what you understood from me that is saying, and you're going to go, I heard that you want fish and chips. And if you haven't heard me properly, you're going to say, I heard you want to go out for a fancy dinner and eat baked fish. And I'm going to go, that's not what I said.
So the tool, basically, and I apologize if I'm oversimplifying this, but basically the tools can be anything. It can be a book, or it can be a conversation, it can be a text message. But basically, for lack of a better word, forces the other party to acknowledge, listen, and then, respond to your need, or to the verbalization of what you think you need, right?
The tool is the listening. It's in the communication. So that is the tool. The tool is being able to say what you need in a really calm environment, in a very kind way, and the other person to say, "This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing this. Is this what is this right?" And that becomes part of that toolkit. So you have a really great communication tool, which is the way that you're going to go about doing that. So I think the word tools are very interesting. People keep coming and asking me for tools, and I sometimes want to give them a bag with a hammer and a stud finder. But actually, a tool is an emotional toolkit where you understand very clearly where the boundaries are for you and how you deal with each one of these things, like how you deal with conflict, how you deal with grief. It's the way, it's the manner with which you actually organize it.
And part of that boundaries, part of the understanding and application of the boundaries, the concept of boundaries is saying no.
Oh my God, I love that word. No, I have literally just had a client right now who's walked out the door and we've just had a conversation about the word no. No is an absolute word, and it is one word that nobody teaches their children. It is one word we don't understand. So most times you'll say to me, Natascha, can you do this interview? I'm going to use this as an example, and I'm going to say no. And you're going to say, but why not? We've done interviews before. You know, it's a really great experience. And I'm going to say, oh, no, but I don't really want to do it. And you're going to go, but I can promise you on the other side of this, it's going to be really great. And you're going to convince me slowly but surely that my no is actually the wrong answer. The answer with no is just no. So then you get to say to me, come on, we've done it before, it'll be great. And I get to say, I've said no.
Okay.
That's
I
it.
before
It's not.
before you before you go further explaining this, because I have questions around that, and also something to share. I just want to say that I really hope that Harry is listening to this podcast or series, because I do feel that this is something that he needs to grow backbone and learn the word no. I
I
mean,
don't even know who you're talking about. And
as in
I'm really,
Harry and Meghan.
oh my goodness, I cannot even have a conversation about them. That is the funniest thing I've ever heard. But the thing about no is that it's very, like, it's super super empowering. It's a really empowering word, and actually it gives you the ability to build power within yourself. And so boundaries build self-esteem, and self-esteem gives you power. And when you have power within a relationship or within any context, it's not about using power badly or being negative when it comes to power. It's about being able to hold your own power so that you understand that when you say something or when you mean that, and that if that if that person doesn't understand it, there is a consequence to not listening to you, to not being able to understand that. And that is that you will essentially remove yourself from that situation, or you will choose not to be around those people. But no, no, I wish every young girl understood that no is their most powerful tool that they could ever have.
Do you find that people do you find that people feel obliged to give a reasoning and rationale and justification to their no? Because I've learned this in business. Sometimes we have to say no because I'm not able to. That's it. That's the explanation. But in relationship, you can't just say, or at least I think you can't just say no. I think that before someone says no, I feel that they need to prepare themselves in terms of explaining why they say no. Or do you agree or disagree
I
with
don't
that
necessarily
concept?
think you need. No, I don't think you need to ever explain yourself, because as soon as you do that, it means that your no isn't a firm no. It can be, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's it. No, I don't feel comfortable with that. That's taking ownership for the experience. It's taking ownership for how you feel about that. It's just, no, I'm not comfortable with that.
And this goes from a decision as to what to have for dinner to whether or not we want children.
It goes to anything, and it goes to business as well. No, that deal doesn't seem like a great deal to me. We can have a conversation. It doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation about a different option. It just means that what you're saying there says, I feel compromised by this. I don't feel safe by this. This is not making me feel good. My gut instinct is to say no to you. And therefore, I'm going to say that, but I'm going to stick to it as well. Not going to let you coerce me into behaving differently to the way I authentically feel like. Because what happens then is as soon as you can push somebody, you can take advantage of them and they lose their power at that point. They fall off that pedestal that you put them on, or that they've put themselves on. And then you get shame and you get negative emotions, which then feed into self
And
esteem,
it's a
which
vicious cycle.
it's a very vicious cycle. So you, the no is extremely powerful and needs to be exercised.
So we talk a lot about power. You talk a lot about power. We discuss a lot
Mm.
about power. Uh, you know, I'm a Star Wars fan, so there's always the light side and the dark side, right? Is it like that too when it comes to power in a relationship? Is there such thing as good power and bad power in a relationship?
Well, there's coercive abuse, and then there's internal self worth. And when I talk about power, I talk about self worth. It's holding your power. When you meet somebody that has great boundaries, they have a natural level of power. And what it actually means is that you feel safe with them. They make you feel secure. You want to do business with somebody that you know has integrity and is powerful within themselves. I'm not talking about using external power to coerce people into doing things that they don't want to do or being manipulative using your power. I'm talking about physical power where you're overpowering people with your physicality. I'm talking about an internal belief of who you are and what you stand for. Because if that power base is unshattered, you can pretty much deal with every situation and you can stay risk-free and really, really safe.
How do you then? So I can only speak from my experience and understanding about power and the dynamic in a relationship. I'm the type of person who need that push, who need that strong encouragement to actually do things. I have big ideas. I have a lot of ideas that often I became, for lack of a better word, lazy in terms of implementing it. I need that push. I need that, you know, a little bit more of a strong encouragement to actually get things done, to be called out and to prove my accountability. So how do you then how do you define that kind of dynamic in a relationship?
I think that's just considered support. I mean, you need people around you who see that your self worth, know that there's one thing I know about you, and you might need to be pushed a little bit when it comes to most things, but you're a self starter. You always have been. You have great ideas. You've pretty much run this race on your own. You have support from your family and you have support from your business environment, but they wouldn't have anything to support if you weren't running your own race. So yes, you might need to get pushed to start a Substack, blog, but ideally you weren't pushed to do any of the other things that you've done along the way. You're going into America, you're going and doing all these incredible things. That's very self-driven. So I don't know about whether or not that's got anything to do with power. You run your own race and you always have. So what you need is support. You need strong belief and strong support from the people around you. And they do that because you are actually very sure of who you are and what you're doing. I've never seen you waver in all the time that I've known you, and that's been many years. You have remained extremely sure of your path and where you're going to. And everybody else is hopping on for the ride. You're running the race.
Well, preferably on the bus with your picture on the side of it. So
It's not about that bus. That bus, I had so many people. My feet were so big on that bus. I was the entire length of that bus, and my feet were the biggest part of that of me on that bus. I mean,
I mean, if you are if you happen to live in Sydney and you're lucky enough to run into a bus with with Natasha's picture on the side of it, I take a picture and I'll give you $5.
I
So
don't think that bus is still going around any longer. That
not
bus is
anymore. That you're right. You're right. We'll probably need to get another one. Just because it works so well. Because uh, I do think that that statement of, you can't lose your movement. Mobility is very important. That's very powerful. But I still want to go back into the relationship because we talk a lot about what the things and the tools that we can use to make a relationship successful. But as with a lot of things in life, some relationships are not successful. And how do you how does one deal with a failure in a relationship when, because obviously there is an emotional aspect to it, but there's also like a practical aspect to it in terms of house or money and stuff like that. But let's just start with the emotional aspect of that, because you need you need to fix what's inside before you look after what's outside, right?
Usually, what lands up happening is that the power base within the relationship changes. So, ideally, when you get together, you come together with a myth, an understanding of who you are to one another. You know, you start off as Bonnie and Clyde, or the knight on the white horse and the damsel in distress, or you are, you know, you're the power couple, or you're the sporty people, the healthy ones. You're the, you know, so you've got this myth around who you are, who you represent. And normally within that structure, when you first start out, there is someone who is the goal and someone who is chasing that goal. And it often happens like that. And the power base sits very comfortably. In traditional environments, a lot of the time women have had the power and men chased women. You know, that was what it looked like. But what lands up happening is that somewhere along the line, the power base starts to shift. It starts to go, it starts to alter. And as it starts to alter, what lands up happening is that the other person stops being compelled to want to be around that other person. And it can sometimes happen with something as small as losing a job, you know, or they buy into the idea that you're a career person and you're going places, and then you suddenly decide that you actually want to sell holistic brownies around the corner, and the whole idea of what they bought into has changed. Once the power starts to shift in the relationship, often it's really difficult for couples to kind of maintain that status quo, and you always find it with the anxious and the avoidantly attached. I almost always and only see people who are anxious and avoidant coming in for counseling.
Are there two, or I don't know, I feel that, in my mind there are at least two, if not three, pivotal moments and a turning point in your lives. But are there in relationships, are there moments or point in time where this shifts is a lot more significant than others? Say one thing that comes in mind is that when you have a kid, for example.
So I usually see couples within the first 3 years of having a child or two children. And then I see them often, I mean, this is not always, but I'd say 90% of my clients. And then the ones who come in once at the 17 to 20-year mark. So those are the two different groups that I see. Often what's happening in those two groups are significant shifts within women. So hormonal shifts, massive hormonal shifts. Initially, once you've had a baby, as a woman, your entire life has changed. Your body has changed. Everything you stood for before you had a child now no longer exists. It's a completely, and then you're isolated. We no longer have communities where you can go with your children. A lot of people come from overseas, especially in Western communities. So they've got no family support. They've got no family around them. So this is really, really important. And they want that husband, that partner, to actually be their support system. The difficulty is that that man is out there doing what he thinks he's supposed to be doing, which is providership. So he's out and he's going to work every day and he's working to, bring home enough money so they've got a house and they've got all the things. And a woman sitting at home looking after children and is exhausted and is seeking connection. She wants connection. He's going out and doing what he thinks he's been made to do, which is, provide. So you see that in that situation, those relationships are survivable. They need strengthening tools. They need time. They need understanding. I always think there's a lot of hope for those relationships. What happens in the later on relationships, often women have gone through menopause. And I'm not suggesting that it's always women that cause the fracture in relationships, but often that shift in a hormone base changes things. The things that men tell me more than anything else when they come to me is it is the same thing. It's unbelievable. They say, I wish she would just touch me. They crave being touched, and not sexually. They don't even care if they're having sex or not. They just want a
It's that
woman.
connection.
It's just, I think it's validation. It's being seen. They're literally happy with a hand on their back. They want to be cuddled in bed. They want to have a woman actually hold their hand. So when I ask people, when, men, when did this change for you? They say, when she stopped kissing me on the mouth to say hello and goodbye, when we stopped holding hands. And often what lands up happening is that women fuse to their children. So you land up with, they become a unit. She's doing everything for the children and he's off at work. And invariably that leads to affairs, it leads to alcohol problems, it leads to a whole lot of issues where you land up with a massive amount of disconnect. And invariably, those relationships, when they come in at that stage, they're really hard to save.
Can can a relationship survive infidelity in your mind?
A relationship can survive anything. It's just up to the people who are involved. I've heard this so many times, and I think Esther Perel, she talks about it. It's like, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Is infidelity the very worst thing that can happen in a relationship? When was that come? But the biggest problem with infidelity, if it's you get two types of infidelity, I think. You get somebody who will always cheat. They will be a cheater from day one. They will be doing it behind your back in subtle ways, continuously, all the time. It's just part and pattern of who they are. They've probably had some trauma. They like risk. They need a lot of validation. They seek validation in all these it's like eating junk food. It's just like constant. Whereas you might get another person who cheats because they crave affection and attention and they haven't been seen for a really long time. And
But
what
that's
they do.
not really a reason though, because I have to say that I think infidelity is the worst thing that can happen in a relationship, save for murder, obviously. Uh, but what I'm saying is that I don't know. I don't mean that you say the way that you say that infidelity can be caused by that lack of validation and that need to be touch and connection, but it's also on to that partner to communicate his or
I'm
her
not
needs.
justifying it. I'm not justifying it. I'm saying why it happens.
Okay.
There's no, it happens because there is a gap. A gap has grown. And you land up happening is you have couples coming in with a couple saying, he cheated, and therefore I have a big problem. And my question to the couple is, how did he have enough space to cheat? Where did the space grow between the two of you? Because the problem with him cheating, yes, the act is, heinous. It's a horrible thing to have to live with. But at some point, both parties drop the ball in that relationship. And that woman, if it's a man that's cheating, she allowed a lot of space between the two of them. So there was a lack of affection, unable to communicate, and vice versa. If a woman cheats, then the man has allowed a lot of space. So that means you're not showing up present. You're not doing date nights. You're not interested in where that person is growing or going to. You're not interested in how you're not making each other a priority. I mean, there should never be enough space in a relationship for somebody to go and cheat. And often, if somebody does cheat in a later situation and they've never done it before, it's not something they're used to, they will invariably leave that person and repartner with a new person because it's actually a signal that the relationship is finished.
And because everybody's situation is different and therefore the relationship is different as well. What would be in your experience and in your professional opinion be the general consensus of a successful relationship? What defines a successful relationship? Because
I,
I know people who are in an open marriage, that I would think that their relationship is successful regardless whether or not they're polygamy or being polygamy or monogamous. So what in your professional opinion defines a successful relationship?
Teamwork, being a team.
So
If
not
you're
love.
love has nothing to do with it. Love is the profit of a good relationship. Love is a word. I hear it so often, but we still love each other. I'm like, but you treat each other appallingly. You speak to each other so badly. This can't be love. If this is what love is, I don't want love. Love is not love. Love is not love is abused. And love, and I say that all the time, love is the profit of a successful relationship. It is when you build the scaffolding and the structure of your relationship so that you have good communication, good conflict management. You make space for sex. You make space for date nights. You are a team. You are working towards a common goal. You are going in the same direction. You agree on how you parent. You know, you each have one another's backs. You're not interested in the clutter and the rubbish of life outside of your team. Your team comes first. When you go to that party or when you're out, you know where that other person is. You know that you're working together. You also are 100% invested in that other person and they are 100% invested in you. There is no 50-50. I have never heard anything more ridiculous than 50-50 in a relationship. Who's doing what 50? What is 50? If you're doing 50, how do you know what the other 50 is? It is 100%. You are there 100% to make sure that that other person has the most amazing life. And they are there 100% to make sure yours is amazing. And then it's impossible to go wrong because you are fully invested and you are a complete team. And that is what is going to make a successful relationship.
Wow. And this is the reason why I wanted you to send me some of the things that you're working on and some of the things that you're dealing with when it comes to, advising or counseling your clients, because otherwise we will be talking for like 4 hours because it can go on and on. But obviously we don't want that, because then I want you to give us something enough that we can then learn. But at the same time, if they do need help or professional counseling, how do people get in touch with you?
Oh, I have a website. So it's just nataschamoycounselor.com.au.
I'm gonna
Um,
put that in when we publish this episode. I'm gonna put that in the caption.
I also have, yeah, and I have some social media pages as well. The thing that my thing that I really am quite firm about as well, and I think this makes a really big difference, is that arguments, discussions should never, ever happen on text message. Never.
Because
Text
people can
message
read it in a 10,000 different ways.
text message is the worst communication tool. Write it down by all means in your notes and feel free to sit and read it to that person. But if you cannot read it to their face, if you cannot say it to their face, you cannot write it. And you have to work out what your tone is. And it causes more problems. Text message causes more problems than anything else I've seen. I've seen people, they were calling out text messaging constantly. This is what they said. And I'm like, how do you know what they meant?
That makes so much sense and logic. If you can't bring yourself to say that, why write it?
You can't write it. It is just the most disconnecting. It is the most disconnecting tool. It has no tone. So the best thing that you have on your side, plus if you have to say it, you generally will have to think it a little bit longer because that person might not be around. So it takes the energy out of it, especially if it's conflict. So write it down in your notes, get it out of your body, and then you kind of look at it, you take the good lines from it, and then you get to sit down together in your conflict space, opposite one another, eye to eye, or do it on FaceTime. I like FaceTime. FaceTime's great. You got to look at each other, eye to eye. Can't
Or
be
do
going
it on a
separate.
Substack Live.
Yeah. Or you do it something like, but you literally eye to eye. And when you're eye to eye with someone, there's no hiding. You are looking at their soul.
And it also reminds you of how important that person is to you, and despite the things that makes you angry at them, there are also things that make you super happy with them. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. I learned so much from today's talk, and thank you so much for coming on. But before I let you go, I
Mm,
want you to answer one final question from me.
sure.
I know you for many, many years. I know I know
Too
your life.
many.
I know about your life and all the challenges, and also the wins that you have in life. What advice would you give to your younger self, in particular about learning about love, loss, and also personal growth? Because I feel that that's important. Life is a journey. So what would you tell to your younger self in terms of what you wish she knew back then?
I probably would have told myself to go and read The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which I found to be incredibly illuminating. And I probably would have told myself that I was more beautiful than I thought I was. I was cleverer than I thought I was. I was worth more than I thought I was. That I was more special, and that the people around me who had the problems with me, the problems were within them, not within me. So I probably would have sat there and had a really good heart to heart with myself and gone, you go, girl, you're going to be fine. And yeah, and I am. So, and now I get to help people, and it's a really, really nice feeling.
You are, and it makes me want to hug you right now, or want a hug from you. We can hug each other. We'll be up there very soon, hopefully. But what I just want to, I want to close off in saying that I always know you as someone who put a lot of value in one's power, in the power of your voice. I think that's the headline of your podcast coaching program, and I do believe that to give yourself a permission to tap into that power, to exercise that power is very, very strong. Thank you so much again, Natascha, for coming on. I can't wait to catch up with you in person. But until then, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Lots of love.
Lots of
See
love. Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.